This is Erma Grego from Senior Perspective. Today we are going to see a very interesting display of Pickett's Charge with the Civil War, the Confederates against the Union Army. And we will be going inside very shortly to see this display. We'd like to now introduce Mr. Paul Hastings.
Hazlett.
Hazlett.
Hazlett,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
Should we start that over again? Okay, I would now like to introduce Mr. Paul Hazlett. He's going to tell us about the Pickett's Charge of the Civil War.
Right.
Okay, and first of all, I'd like to know, when did you become interested in the Civil War?
Well, about 30 years ago, I had an aunt die, and I went up to the funeral parlor, and I had 3 uncles, and wasn't much to say. I don't see them that often, so I said, make up a conversation. I says, and which was true. We were going to go to Gettysburg for some reason. I took the kids to Gettysburg, and the one uncle said, "My God," he says, "your grandfather was a big hero down there." And I said, "I never heard of that." He says, "Yeah, on your dad's side, he was a big hero. You got to check into that." So I was really thrilled. So when we finally come home, we went down the following week then to Gettysburg, and I walked into one of those stores where they sell souvenirs and stuff.
Like,
and they said, "Oh yeah, Hazel's out there. Go out there, you'll see a little round top. Go up there, you'll see it all." So naturally we went out to a little round top, and sure enough, there was 2 big monuments, one life size and one smaller, and two or three plaques.
Oh my goodness.
And but it wasn't my grandfather; it was an uncle. My grandfather's name was Charles E., and this Charles E. was killed there. He had 2 sisters, and and 2 sisters and an older brother who was killed in one of the battles. I forget now which one. And then he had a younger brother, and that's who this was. So
this was all during the Civil War then that this all happened.
Yeah. So then I was real thrilled to say, well, I had not to make any big deal to me, but it's nice to know that you have an ancestor or someone
that's something to be very proud of.
Participated in the Civil War or wherever, and so that's how I really got interested. Really, and little by little, I kept adding on. I'd find pick up something or a bugle or something. I'd bring it home and hang it up on a wall. And,
well, how long did it take you to build the display we're going to see?
The display here, be easier to say probably guessing in man hours, because sometimes I painted these soldiers for an hour and a half until you get tired. And so I would say I probably got 3 months in just painting alone.
Just preparation.
If I would get them all together and paint them. It would take about 3 months to do that.
What do you mean by painting them?
Well, these all come, they come in blue and they come in gray, but you can use either one for the Union or the Confederacy. I take Confederate soldiers and made Unions out of them, and
whatever you needed the most of.
Yeah, and everyone needed painting, because there was, unless you had the metal ones, which most of them come from England, and they're very expensive. They run about $15 to $20 a piece. So needless to say, I couldn't afford nothing like that.
No.
So I just started one day as something to do, and then I put them in on the table there and made a pretty nice looking battle, and the kid said, "Why don't you get some more?" I get some more. So I just pick them up and start painting them, and the first, you know, I had enough, so I put them in here. It was half the size of what you see here, and I had them on there and had it in here, and then I kept painting them. I had more room, so I had to add on. So this is as far as I got.
You had to make your battlefield bigger.
If I get any more, I'll have to go out that way or this way. But I think that's about the end of it, because I probably want to go, and I found a lot of people that were really, really sincerely interested in what I had here, which makes me think, well, maybe I should make another one. Not of Pickett's Charge, but maybe Little Round Top or Antietam, the other battles.
Some of the other
Some of the other battles that they had, famous battles. Antietam's a big one.
Well, before you do the display then, you read up on the history of it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've always had most of this Gettysburg has been behind me for, like I say, the last 30-some years. But if I'd have to go into other battles or something, I'd have to do a little more research on it, because most all these are the different generals that Lee had, and Kemper and the rest of them, and Armistead, and Lee is in the back there, and we don't have room for General Meade because his lines was back here. But most of them, the original thing of this front, which I have on tape, they had 140 guns approximately, opened fire at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and brought this artillery fire on the Union lines was up here. Lee's original plan was to use this clump of trees. The main force was to come up here, and the rest of them would come up and then gradually go on an oblique march. And at first, you know, they'd all be on this little thing here and clump of trees, and they would split the Union lines in half, and they could dissolve the whole army.
Yeah.
But it wasn't to be, because with the artillery that we had and the men that we had hidden behind rocks and so on, their gunfire was actually, more of it was going over their hill, over the top of these troops, falling harmlessly on the other side. So that when they thought that they had wiped out these Union gunners, they didn't, because they had moved these guns to make preparation for the charge. And once the charge started, why, they ran into all these cannon first, and they were using grape shot and the whole bit, and whole lines were disintegrating at each gunshot. And they really was killing hundreds and hundreds of men. You have to visualize, this thing only lasted 1 hour from the time they left over there till they got, to the most of them got to this rail up here where the stone wall was. And they killed, captured, or wounded 9,000 Confederate soldiers.
Well, before we go into that too much, let's find out a little more about the construction of it, and then you can tell us with the camera.
Okay, well, these are...
You had, how many soldiers do you have on this display?
There's about 3,000.
3,000? Oh, my goodness.
Might be 2,700 or 3,100. I never counted them.
Those are the live ones or the dead ones?
These are all the live. That's living in the dead. The dead soldiers, they were ones that I slopped up trying to paint. So
well, maybe you could show us one, how you made it into a dead soldier. Maybe you could pick one out of your display here. Just focus it like into the camera.
Yeah, here's one here that I took his arm and raised it up with the, if you can see this gun, raised it up and then melted his arm to do that, and I had to melt this leg to bend it backwards and to show that he had fallen. The same way with these, this horse over here with the officer on it. They were simulated, they were shot, but I heated the horse's legs, and when I put them down, I just pressed on them. So the driver, the horse officer, leaned forward, and the horse was dead and leaned forward, and therefore he was put out of action by that. Here's another guy that's very hard to do. These little ones, they're kneeling in the first place. But I heated them up enough that I could bend them. I could bend him over sideways and also bring his arm away from where he was firing it. He would naturally go with these, see, but he won't stand up. He was kaput, as they say. And then these are men on the stretchers. They came that way, and then I cut the legs off the stands. These were actually men who worked a cannon, who had a long rod in their hand. So I cut the base off, cut the rod off, and laid him on the stretcher like so. And the flags all had to be Union flags. Most of them were come that way, but I painted a lot of them that came. Also one with the eagle on over here. The Confederate
What does that stand for?
I forget what regiment.
Oh, it's a regiment. Did it?
Yeah, it was a regiment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a Confederate flag
just
over
like
there.
This one over here would be a regiment also. Then.
Right, that's another one. That would be the same as this one, only in a bigger flag. Then we have a Confederate flag. I think that's, I'm not sure, Alabama, I'll guess. One of them. They all had so many flags representing all the states and all the counties and all the cities, and they glorified in their flags,
well,
which made it nice when people looked at the display.
These white puffs that you see around here, that's the smoke from the cannon?
Indicating the smoke where the fire hit. You can see here where a cannon fire hit, and these men are actually up in there. They're on wire. I have them all wired up, and they're sticking out like they were being blown up. Same way over there, you can see how the guy is being lifted down here, and some of them are just bursting right on top. In other words, they didn't hit anything yet, but it just blew up, exploding in the air. Bombs bursting in there, so to speak.
Yeah, well, this right here is where they were aiming for them.
This was
right
what they
in
called
here.
a clump of trees, and this was the long wall that they had separating the road from the man's farm that owned it. And we have a man over here. His name was Armstead. He was the one of the generals who was leading this attack. And
which one is he? Can you?
Right here.
Oh, with the sword up in the air.
Right. He had a sword. In order for him to lead his men, he took his hat off and threw it on the sword and raised his arm. Well, unfortunately for him, a few minutes after he'd done that, he was slain.
He was a perfect target then.
Right. He had a very good target standing on the wall the whole bit. And here again, you can see all the men are getting shot.
Yeah.
Dropping their guns and holding their chest where the bullet went in or so on. And then this is the only eyewitness to the whole Battle of Gettysburg who wrote it down the same day. His name was Haskell, and he was a writer by trade, and he was, his two officers were, commanding officers were wounded, so he rode up and down the lines getting these men into order to help fill up the holes in the line. And years after, a Confederate wrote in a paper in his memoirs, he always wanted to know the name, who this dumbbell was that rode up and down on a white horse with all them bullets flying around, and did he ever get killed or whatever happened to him? Well, needless to say, he didn't get killed, but 2 months later he was killed at Cold Harbor. But he had sent all the description of the battle home to his brother, and his brother put it in a drawer. And it wasn't brought out then until 1909, and his brother wanted to know if it was worth anything. So that was more thrilling to get an eyewitness, the only eyewitness. There's not even an eyewitness picture of it. All the pictures they took were after the battle. They were taking pictures naturally of the dead, so there was no actually guy brought up a picture. And One guy did draw a sketch, but it was very small. It didn't mean too much.
Well,
So,
that man on a horse over there that's by himself there, was he a general or something?
yeah, he was a leader. That was
For the Confederate? Was he
yeah,
a-
Confederate soldier, officer.
Everything was there. They were all killed all
Yeah,
around him.
yeah. Most of that whole, if we could do it right now, we could just take about 80% of all these soldiers on this side and lay them down, because that's who didn't make it.
And it was the Union firing.
Yeah. What really did the damage in this particular battle was the artillery. They just murdered them they came in waves, 3, 4, 5, 6 foot deep, and maybe 100 feet long. And as they got closer and closer, well, they was using the canister and grape shot and the whole bit, and just disintegrating whole lines, or just disappearing from the face of the earth, floating heads and arms were floating everywhere.
Oh my!
And it was a terrible. I think it'd be. I could say it'd be nice to read about it, but I don't think nobody would want to be there and watch this.
Boy, that's for sure.
That had to be an awful.
Was that the farm over in that corner?
Yeah. I only had room for the one farmhouse, and I found room over there to put it. Actually, that was deeper than what it's supposed to be, but there was like 140 guns.
That's where they were lined up back there.
Yeah, the whole field was about 1.25 miles long, and 1 mile up this way, and that's the unfortunate part of coming in an open field. Sending young boys like that with the sun in their eyes the whole bit wasn't my idea of a good general.
Right.
But they all thought that General Lee was the greatest, but not in my mind. We didn't have too many that were, and either side had too many that were really good. Like that night, they should have tore that whole fence down, and they didn't do it. So when they started the charge, which should have been way back from the end of the road,
Well, they had to climb the fence.
yeah, the artillery aimed their guns at that fence.
Sure,
As soon as they start climbing over the fence, they hit them with the artillery, and just everybody was going, you know. And but it was a shame, brother against brother, and there was some stories that I read where they found two together, and one man and the other man who turned out to be his wife, both killed at the same time, laying there. And different stories you read of what happened on this thing. A lot of women did that, dressed up like men. And got himself killed or got away with it, one or two.
Well, they were short of
After this battle, that was the downfall of the Confederacy, because the heart of their troops was taken out right here, even though they put up a battle for another 2 years. This was the one that really hurt them the worst. They didn't have the manpower.
What did you say this was called?
This is Pickett's Charge.
Pickett's Charge.
George Pickett. And he lived a long time. He lived up, I think, around 1910.
Why did they name it? Was it his?
He was the officer that Lee named.
Oh, okay.
Like, General Pickett, you want to lead this? And I'll take it. And so it's called Pickett's Charge. And I have a little bit of music on here if you want to.
Yeah, if you turn it on,
It's
we
just
have some
more or
sound
less,
effects here.
not very much, but it's. I hear the drums, or the cannon first, and then the drums.
There's the cannons now.
That's the cannons, yeah. You have to visualize it being
They were
fired.
just going right down.
Yeah, and then it's all over again.
Well, they were pretty safe back there then.
Yeah, the artillery, they were about the only ones that had any safety about them. But even then, our shells were even landing over there. A lot of those guns were destroyed by our shot. I guess in reality, there was probably a better safe, but there was really no safe place. Yeah, we had all our cannon back in here. Some of them up further, back a little further. These are the firings. These are the firings.
Yeah, I see them.
Here comes your drum.
Is that the Confederate?
Yeah, that's the Confederate drums. They're marching out now to come across, and then I had a little extra on there, but what happened, the phone rang, and got copied on there. So I had to shut off before I get that far. Otherwise, you come on to the sad music, or everything becomes quiet for a minute, and you hear the
there's a general's horse over there. That's
yeah,
down.
yeah. That was a Confederate yell. They yelled a lot, trying to scare the enemy. And it used to work at first, but didn't work after that.
Yeah, it made it sound like it was a bigger.
Yeah, and then it didn't work. And then got too war hardened to be scared of a yell.
Well, look at this, you're almost on top of one another.
Oh yeah, that was, they call that a bloody angle there. They just carried them as they did it. It was all along the line. Wasn't too many reached this line. Most of them were all killed back in here.
Yeah. That makes it realistic.
Yeah. I wish I had the other one going. Yeah.
Damn it.
I had to shut that off. I don't know if you got damn it on there or not. I had it all going real quiet, nobody around, and the phone rings of all the time. And like I say, that's the main. I want to show you some other few things that I have, like Confederate uniform.
He goes on a stretcher.
Yeah, well, he's carrying water. See,
Oh yeah.
so I'll let him carry the water. But there, here's our wire. See, the wire holding this guy.
Oh yeah. Too bad you can't focus into that. Can you see it? Yeah. Good. Well, you make it so realistic with those puffs of smoke and everything.
Yeah, that's. I'd say the more I did, I had a couple of puffs and I put more on it. It just got. I didn't want to get over puffed because in reality, what happened? Them Confederates fired for 2 hours, and that smoke literally covered the whole field, and they were shooting up into nothing.
Right.
And they were missing. And then when they come up on the ground level, you could still see, so they could just mow them down, but it had a very large ground air cover, just full of smoke.
Well, in comparison to the number of soldiers of the Union Army and the Confederate Army, was the Confederate larger than the?
They were at the time. They were
pretty even?
pretty good. Union had a little bit more,
Oh,
but
really?
we couldn't get ours all up here, and
But
some
I
of
mean
them were
before
still.
they started out and everything.
Oh, when they started out, we had more men than they did, and we always ended up with more men. But they was losing. We were losing more men than they were. That was the trouble. And we lost more people in the Civil War than we lost in all the wars put together, counting the Revolutionary War, 1812, Vietnam, World War I, II, III, all of them. More men were killed in that one war in 4 years than all our battles put together.
Right.
And the worst part is the actual count will never be known because the Confederates never kept records. And the only ones that they could count after the battles that we won, they could count the dead and all that kind of stuff. But it was then we had so many people that, like in this tent, there's Clara Barton there too.
Ah.
And she started Red Cross.
Yeah.
They would cut your arm off. If a bullet would hit it, the bullet was so big it would flatten out. And if it hit a bone, it had to cut your arm off here, 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 wherever. And they literally had legs and arms outside these tents piled X amount of height.
Oh, my goodness.
So many people, they were cutting arms and legs off. They only had time. They didn't have time to put a little Band-Aid on the hip part, you know. And so many died during that time, but gangrene would set in.
Yeah.
But even after the war, thousands of them died with these wounds that they had that would break open and they get gangrene and they would die. And they were actually never counted, Union or Confederate.
Yeah.
So I could safely probably say we lost almost pretty close to 1 million men, both sides, counting both sides. Pretty close to 1 million men, counting the ones that died, which we know there was many of them right after the war, that their wounds opened up and they just gangrene or whatever.
What do you plan to do with your display?
I haven't really made up my mind. I may decide to make antietam or something that, or do something with it.
Because this is a lot of work.
Well, it's enjoyable work because I love to do it.
It's a
I
wonderful
have the time. I've been retired for 25 years, and most people don't work that long. And
well, this keeps you interested in.
yeah, well, the trains. You know, I used to collect trains, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of trains, and now it's down. I think I got 50 trains left. 50 sets. That's about it. And that's for me. That's like nothing. But like I say, all things come to an end. You get older. You can't
do it.
Can't do it no more.
Right.
You just don't have the energy or the. You have the energy, but the mind won't let you.
Yeah. Are you planning to do another display of some kind?
Yeah, I'm going to make another one. Probably after the first of the year, things will get quiet, and then I'll remove these, and somebody will come up with something, or I'll come up with something, and I'll make them.
Yeah.
And I want to get that. Is it better to get that uniform? I'd like you to show that, because most people never seen one.
That's right.
Number two, and most people, unless you was watching TV, never saw a Confederate drummer boy either. And this is just the jacket. And, you know, oh, I think that'd be better in here.
Okay, so this is what did you say, the drummer boy?
Drummer boy, Confederate Army.
The Confederate Army. What, the stripes, what does that?
He was a corporal in the band, and this is from North Carolina College, Benning College, which is, I don't think it's there anymore, but it was back in them days. And it was like VMI was another college where they all took up this military stuff, and then when the war came, they marched out. VMI is the most famous. When they got their soldiers and they chased the Union, as young as they were.
Were there buttons on the other sleeve also?
Yeah.
Or,
I won't say anything what, but no, okay. There's buttons on. There's 3 missing on this side, and there's a couple on the back also. I think, if I can remember. Yeah, also.
Oh, there was a lot of buttons on that, wasn't there?
This is but it's starting to get.
What time of the year was it that the battle?
Well, it started in April and it ended up in April 4 years later.
This looks like it's pretty heavy material.
Oh yeah, and they wore these, believe it or not, because they only had one change of uniform. A lot of these men here, even Union, had these uniforms on, and it was 90 degrees, and charging up that hill and all that stuff, and fighting in it and the whole bit. Hard to believe it, the people were that tough.
Yeah.
They could put up with this type of a thing that was.
That is something to hold on to.
Yeah, that is really a loss. I got a little bit, but I sort of stopped that. But it's really nice. Like I say, they're very hard to find. The Confederates, when they went home, they had nothing, only the clothes on their back, and some of that even was stolen off of the dead Union. Yeah. They had nothing. They had no shoes unless they stole them off Union, and they took the swords off them, the guns off the regular men. The officers got to keep their swords and their horses, but the enlisted men could keep nothing, and they had to give everything up. So needless to say, when they walked home, they said, "I'm home, but I got nothing." And that's exactly what they had, nothing. And so anything that survived on the Confederate side would be considered a pretty good, close to a miracle. Yeah. And to find this as a Confederate drummer boy would even make it even think. I might end up donating it to the museum or something like that, because I don't want it to be abused. I want someone to really
where someone else can appreciate it.
Right, yeah. Because even my children, it's nice, Dad, but that's all, you know. They don't have the interest in it as I do. But
well, their interest is different.
Yeah, everybody is, just like trains. Only two of I have 6 children. Only 2 of them really had the interest in the trains. The other 4 could care less. They could care less. And they were interested in rockets and, you know, to the moon and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, this was so very interesting, and I'm so glad to get it down on tape and that you know, because this is something that, you know, you don't hear about too much.
No, that's, you know, I watched a few of your shows with some Veteran and the whole bit, and I understood a lot of them, what they went through, because I was there. And I say I was glad I was there, but I wouldn't go back. I've had mine, and let someone else do it. But I watched some of your shows on TV there with the old soldiers, more or less, which I knew some of them were telling their stories. And
well, thank you.
I like that. And that's what you should do. You should pass these down.
Right. Well, see,
to
now,
the children.
Now it's on tape, and hang on to that tape.
Right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
very
it was
appreciate
a pleasure
it.
to
I'm glad to do it.
here.
I'm no public speaker, as you can see.
Well, you did a wonderful job.
I just try to.
Well, you told it the way it was.
That's best I can do. You know, use some fancy words, but probably wouldn't count anyway.
Well, we'll keep track of you whenever you get your next display or something.
Yeah, well, who knows, maybe next year, if everything goes right, I might have one bigger or better.
Okay.
I wish I had my trains up the way I used to have them. I used to have 5 trains running, and bridges and buildings and rivers. Actually, the river is 10, 15 feet long with bridges going across, and people, and circuses, and airports, a whole bit. The whole town just took up the whole garage. I had about 10 square feet in this garage. It was mine. The rest of it was 100% trains. Well, needless to say, it gets hard to wire them up and stuff, so I put this up, and I had it run there at Christmas, and then I just was sitting too close. I had to tear this down, and then when I did, I had to move this, and then put the other, join it together, so I got this solid piece right now. But this part I had to tear down.
Well, maybe Christmas time you'll have something like this.
Maybe I'll get that.
We'll get it done for Christmas.
I'll have it. I should have it wound up, you know, and it'll. I whistle. The trains whistle and stuff, you know. I'm thinking about also making a big circus.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it'd be.
Well, we're going to keep tabs of you.
Yeah, well, you know where my daughter works up there, and but I'll be doing something.
Okay.
It'll be for kids. You know,
right. I mean, this,
kids.
You know, this tape could even be used in a history class or something like that. I mean, you know, when they study about it and everything, you've got it right in front of you, which is wonderful.
That's about the only, you know, the artists draw pictures of it.
But to have it displayed like this, it's...
I have pictures in there of famous artists I have 2 upstairs and 3 in there, and the one shows a little bit of Pickett's charge, and but that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's famous worldwide. Even they use this in General Lee's tactics in some of the colleges in England and even in Germany.
Yeah.
The tactics that they used, that the outcome was really great. They figured out how they'd done them, and they wanted to use it. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, today's wars are all going to be one bomb does it all, so to speak, and they don't have to worry about being a statistician anymore or a fancy general.
Well, I don't know. They're going to have other problems. So
we're going to have all. God.
That's,
I don't think I'll have to worry about them. But,
well, thank you again very much.
Thank you for
it was very
coming
interesting
over.
afternoon.
And, if I get something that's worthwhile, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Because I always like to do this kind of stuff for the kids, and I put that up for the kids, you know, and the trains and stuff. And this year I do all the guys that come here. I haven't had one to say, boy, that's not too good. You know, they all like it, you know.
Yeah.
Wish they'd have thought about it or whatever. But almost by accident.
That's wonderful. And it's so realistic.
I started to enjoy it myself, you know. I wish I could move them.
Yeah. Well, this is Erma Grego of Senior Perspective.